The release of 50 Cent's documentary has shifted the public conversation in a major way. What began as a project focused on long-standing questions around Diddy quickly expanded into something much larger. As the documentary gained attention and climbed the charts, it reopened old stories, revived forgotten interviews, and placed renewed focus on people who were once considered untouchable. The spotlight did not stay in one place. It spread outward, touching everyone who had been publicly connected to Diddy over the years. In that growing storm of discussion, reactions were expected. Commentary was expected. Statements were expected. But one thing stood out more than anything else, and that was silence. Snoop Dogg, a figure known for speaking freely, sharing opinions, and staying active in public debates, did not say much as the documentary took over social media and news cycles. For someone with a long history of openness, that quiet became noticeable. In today's media space, silence during controversy is rarely ignored. People read into it, they question it, they assign meaning to it. The absence of a response can sometimes draw more attention than a loud denial or defense. As discussions continued, many began to ask whether this silence was simply personal choice or whether it reflected deeper pressure behind the scenes. To understand why the silence drew so much attention, it is important to look at the long relationship between Snoop Dogg and Diddy. Their connection was never limited to music. Over the years, both men spoke openly about their bond, describing it as family-like. Their children spent time together, their families moved in similar circles, they attended the same schools, traveled together, and shared the same social spaces. This was not a loose industry connection, it was a close, personal relationship built over decades. When two powerful figures build that level of closeness, it naturally creates shared history, shared memories, and shared exposure. When controversy enters a circle that tight, neutrality becomes difficult. Distance is hard to maintain. Even if someone is not accused of wrongdoing, their proximity to the situation places them under public review. People begin to look back at old interviews, past reactions, and moments that once seemed normal. Clips are replayed, expressions are studied, jokes are re-examined. Nothing exists in isolation anymore. Context changes once trust begins to crack. The documentary did more than revisit Diddy's past. It opened the door to broader discussions about celebrity culture, power, and protection. A long list of famous names surfaced, not as confirmed participants in any crimes, but as people who had crossed paths with Diddy at events, parties, and social gatherings over many years. This list included musicians, actors, business figures, and public personalities from many industries. The presence of these names does not prove wrongdoing. That point must be made clearly. Knowing someone or attending the same events does not equal guilt. However, the size of the list raised questions about how wide the circle really was. Some commentators emphasized that Diddy was known for hosting large, high-profile events. These gatherings were often glamorous, carefully planned, and openly photographed. Many celebrities attended for networking, celebration, or simple social reasons. Not every event carried hidden meaning. At the same time, allegations from lawsuits and public statements have described a darker side to certain private gatherings. These claims remain allegations and must be handled carefully, but they have added weight to the discussion and increased public curiosity. As legal voices entered the conversation, the tone shifted. Attorneys representing alleged victims spoke publicly about ongoing investigations and the existence of materials that could become part of future legal cases. While details were not released, the acknowledgement alone changed how the public viewed the situation. This was no longer just online talk. It was a legal matter being taken seriously by authorities. When that happens, silence becomes louder. Every person connected to the story faces unspoken pressure, whether justified or not. Old interviews resurfaced, including moments where Diddy spoke carefully on television, choosing words that seemed neutral or vague. At the time, these interviews passed without much reaction. Today, they are viewed through a different lens. The same applies to Snoop Dogg's past appearances. Gestures, laughter, and side comments are now being studied in slow motion. This does not mean those moments reveal truth. It shows how public trust changes perception. Once doubt enters the story, everything is reinterpreted. Another layer to this story comes from long-standing claims in hip-hop history that never fully disappeared. Statements made years ago by figures like Suge Knight have resurfaced, especially regarding the night Tupac was shot and events surrounding that era. These claims remain disputed and unproven, but their return highlights unresolved wounds within the culture. Conflicting stories, missing clarity, and sealed evidence have kept these cases open in the public mind, even when legal processes stalled. When law enforcement voices are mentioned, the discussion becomes even more complex. Former investigators have made statements over the years suggesting corruption, misconduct, and hidden truths within certain cases. Some claim that evidence was sealed, witnesses were ignored, and political pressure played a role in how investigations unfolded. These are serious claims, and they require serious proof. Still, their existence adds to the sense that not everything was ever fully addressed. The documentary also touched on how power works behind closed doors. According to some insiders, documentaries often present a controlled version of events. Names are removed, details are softened, certain connections are left out for legal or business reasons. This does not mean the story is false, but it may be incomplete. When viewers sense that pieces are missing, they begin filling gaps on their own. That is where speculation grows. Another recurring theme is selective accountability. Many cultural critics argue that fame and influence often determine who faces consequences and who does not. Lesser-known individuals are questioned quickly, while powerful figures are given time, space, and protection. This pattern is not unique to one case. It reflects a larger issue within celebrity culture. Admiration can replace scrutiny. Loyalty to success can outweigh moral responsibility. Throughout this entire situation, one fact remains clear. Allegations are not convictions. Claims are not proof. Every individual deserves fair treatment under the law. At the same time, repeated patterns, similar stories from unrelated sources, and consistent descriptions of behavior cannot be dismissed without examination. Balance is required. Caution is required. Truth takes time. Snoop Dogg's silence exists within this complicated environment. It may be strategic, it may be personal, it may be legal. Public figures are often advised to remain quiet during ongoing legal matters, even when they are not directly involved. Speaking at the wrong moment can create unintended consequences. Silence does not always mean guilt. Sometimes it means restraint. Still, in the court of public opinion, silence invites interpretation. Fans who once expected commentary feel confused. Critics grow louder. Supporters search for meaning. This is the reality of modern media. When someone who usually speaks chooses not to, the absence becomes part of the story. The larger issue goes beyond any single person. It raises questions about how stories are told, who controls the narrative, and whose voices are amplified or muted. It challenges audiences to think critically, to separate fact from rumor, and to resist rushing to judgment. At the same time, it reminds powerful figures that influence comes with responsibility. As investigations continue and legal processes move forward, more information may emerge, or it may remain sealed. Until then, the space between confirmed facts and unanswered questions will remain filled with debate. Silence will continue to be analyzed, history will continue to be revisited, and the culture will continue to wrestle with uncomfortable truths that were never fully resolved. In the end, what this moment reveals most clearly is how fragile reputation can be. Years of success can be reshaped by a single shift in public trust. Once that shift begins, nothing is viewed the same way again. Silence, speech, past actions, and old friendships all take on new meaning. Whether that meaning reflects reality or perception is something only time, evidence, and truth can ultimately decide. As the conversation keeps unfolding, another important issue comes into focus, and that is how fear works inside powerful circles. When people reach a certain level of success, their lives become deeply connected to business deals, contracts, brands, and public image. Speaking freely is no longer simple. Every word can affect money, partnerships, and even legal standing. This creates an environment where silence is often chosen over honesty, not because someone is hiding guilt, but because the risk of speaking feels too high. In such spaces, silence becomes a survival tool. Many insiders have said that the entertainment industry does not function like the outside world. Loyalty is often expected, not requested. If someone breaks that unspoken rule, they can lose access, support, and opportunity. This is why some people stay quiet even when they know the public wants answers. They are not just protecting themselves, they are protecting families, employees, and people who depend on them. That pressure is invisible to most viewers, but it is very real. Another layer of this story is how time changes meaning. Events that happened years ago are now being revisited in a completely different climate. What once felt normal or harmless is now questioned. Parties that were once praised as legendary are now examined for what may have happened behind closed doors. The same footage, the same photos, and the same interviews now carry different emotional weight. This does not automatically rewrite history, but it does challenge people to look at it more carefully. Some former associates have spoken about how stories are shaped after the fact. They describe how narratives are cleaned up, how responsibility is shifted, and how focus is redirected away from powerful figures. This does not mean every story is false. It means stories are often incomplete. When viewers sense that something is missing, trust weakens, and once trust weakens, even the truth struggles to be believed. Legal experts often explain that ongoing cases limit what can be said publicly. Even innocent comments can be misinterpreted or used out of context. For public figures, especially those connected through long personal histories, saying nothing is sometimes the safest option. This does not satisfy public curiosity, but it aligns with legal advice. The problem is that the public rarely separates legal silence from moral silence. To many viewers, silence feels like avoidance. The discussion around tapes and recordings has also intensified public concern. Lawyers confirming the existence of sensitive material without naming names created a shift in tone. It moved the story from rumor to serious legal territory. Even without details, the confirmation alone made the situation feel heavier. When evidence is hinted at but not revealed, imagination fills the gap. That is when fear, speculation, and anxiety grow. At the same time, it is important to remember that many claims remain unproven. Lawsuits contain accusations, not verdicts. Media discussion does not replace court decisions. Yet repeated patterns, when described by different people across time, cannot simply be ignored. They demand careful investigation, not instant belief or denial. The balance between fairness and accountability is difficult but necessary. This situation has also reignited old debates about justice in the music industry. Many past cases were never fully resolved. Evidence was sealed, witnesses disappeared, stories conflicted. Over time, frustration built within the culture. For some, this moment feels like unfinished business resurfacing. For others, it feels like history being rewritten unfairly. Both reactions exist at the same time, adding to the tension. The role of media cannot be ignored. Documentaries, interviews, and commentary shape how stories are understood. Editing choices matter. What is included matters. What is left out matters even more. When viewers sense selective storytelling, trust fades. They begin searching for answers elsewhere, often in unreliable spaces. This creates confusion rather than clarity. Snoop Dogg's silence continues to sit at the center of this discussion because it contrasts so sharply with his usual presence. Fans are used to hearing his thoughts. They are used to his humor and openness. When that disappears during a major cultural moment, it feels intentional. Whether that intention is self-protection, legal caution, or personal choice remains unknown. What this moment truly reveals is how power shields itself, not always through action, but through absence. Silence delays consequences. Silence slows momentum. Silence creates space for stories to cool down. It is a strategy that has been used many times before in high-profile cases. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails. The public is now more aware than ever of how these systems operate. People ask harder questions. They re-watch old clips. They connect dots that were once ignored. This does not mean every conclusion is correct, but it does mean blind trust is fading. Fame alone is no longer enough to protect reputation. At the same time, society must resist turning suspicion into certainty without proof. Accountability should be based on evidence, not emotion. Justice must move through proper channels. Public pressure can expose issues, but it should not replace the truth-seeking process. As the story continues to develop, one thing is certain. Silence will keep being analyzed until answers arrive, or the conversation shifts elsewhere. Whether those answers come through courts, investigations, or time itself remains to be seen. Until then, this moment stands as a reminder of how quickly narratives can change and how fragile public trust really is. In a world where influence once guaranteed protection, that protection now feels weaker. The balance between power and accountability is being tested, and how those tests are resolved will shape not just individual legacies, but the future expectations placed on everyone who holds influence in the public eye.